The following is a sports presentation on WHUS Stores. Hello and welcome to the brand new pregame show, the WHUS Sports Page. I'm your host, Harold Darak, and each week I'll be bringing you a complete coverage of all UConn sports and a pregame matchup before today's big game between the University of Connecticut Huskies and the Cadets of Army. The game is starting at 1:55, and bringing you all the action will be Mike Berninski and Steve Tefft. Today's table of contents on the WHUS Sports Page includes a Nancy Amols interview with the new women's varsity soccer coach, Maggie Dunlop. Steve Tefft talks with new head baseball coach Andy Baylock. I will be bringing you a preview of the Army Cadets, and Joe Florence will preview the 1979 UConn Huskies. We'll be back with the Page 1 right after this.
The steel jaw leg hold trap. Invented in the early 19th century, still a hard-nosed killer. The steel jaw. It maims, tortures, and kills. Sometimes animals pull off a leg to escape from this leg hold trap. Write the Animal Protection Institute in Sacramento, California. Post Office Box 22505. We'll tell you what you can do to help America get rid of a killer.
Pedro DeBrito, Joe Maroney, Senior and Junior, Barry Stringfellow, Ken Murphy. How many of those names ring a bell? Now how about Gene Kamer, Marianne Sanford, Patty Hastings, or Kathy Schroeder? Well, if you haven't heard of the last four, it's because they are on a new women's varsity soccer team. Last year, women's soccer on the University of Connecticut was only a club, a very good club, that finished with a record of 9 wins, 1 loss, and 1 tie. Their only defeat was at the hands of an undefeated UMass team. Like any new sport, the women's soccer team needed a new coach, and they found one. She's from Northern Ireland, and she has played soccer on Northern Ireland's national women's team, as well as being captain of her Ulster College women's soccer team. Here's Nancy Amols with an interview with the new head coach of the women's varsity soccer at UConn, Maggie Dunlop.
Nancy Amols with Coach Maggie Dunlop, who's the coach of the women's varsity soccer team. The team has been a club for the past 2 years with Franz Innocent coaching, but this year they finally attained varsity status. Coach, what do you think about the team finally becoming varsity after 2 years of being just a club here at UConn?
Well, I think it's very good now that they've got in at the beginning. Throughout the U.S., there are a number of colleges and universities playing women's soccer. Some still have club and some are going towards varsity status. I think it's good that we're in at the beginning of this. I also think as far as the interest on campus, the fact now that it is a varsity sport, I think will also attract more interest in it.
You've played soccer, I see, in North Ireland's national women's team. As compared to there over in Ireland, how are things with women's soccer over here? What is the status between the two countries?
Well, in Northern Ireland, it's mostly club level, the soccer. As far as the women are concerned, it's mostly played at club level. High school does not really have any organised soccer for women. We teach it in class. Really, that's my experience of teaching soccer in class in Ireland. In the US, I think there's more potential for the growth of women's soccer in the US because they start at a very early age. There's organised teams. There's also in the summer, I've worked at a number of summer camps here, and we've had, most of the camps I've done, it's been mostly boys, but it's started over the past couple of years, more girls are coming to these camps, ranging in age from 7 years up to 15, 16 years of age. And as I say, at the high school, it tends to be more organised with teams at the high school level as well, which we do not have in Britain or in Ireland.
The fact that soccer is such a big thing here at UConn, that the team is ranked nationally, I'm talking about men's soccer, is that going to help or hinder the women's soccer team here? Is that going to have any kind of factor in your performance or maybe fans coming out to watch you people play?
I think it can only be an advantage to us, the fact that the program for the men here is so strong. I don't really see any major disadvantages. I think, as you say, the interest is already there in soccer, and I think that can help us. I don't think there's really anything that's a disadvantage as far as the men's program being so strong.
The fact that also field hockey is such a good team and you are in the same season as field hockey, do you feel that because field hockey is so big here at UConn, you might have lost some good players to them, or that you will be in any way competing against that part of it?
Well, not really. I think the people that are going to be interested in playing on the soccer probably will have had prior experience at high school. And at the high school, it's either hockey or soccer. I think the ones that choose soccer at high school are probably going to choose soccer once they get to university or college level. There'll be some switch over, both by the hockey. Maybe soccer, we'll have some coming to soccer in preference to, say, going to hockey, and the other way around, some that may have played soccer may go over and try hockey. The two sports are very similar in actual fact.
Women's soccer hasn't been around in high schools for that long. Are you finding that the girls that you have coming out for the team have had, plenty of previous experience? Are you getting some that really, have only played other sports or have had no type of experience?
Most of the ones that we've had come out have had some experience, some a little bit more than others. There are few now. We have a number of freshmen that have had quite a good background in soccer. And some of the upperclassmen may have just started it at UConn, but we have some returning upperclassmen that have played, say, in the club for the 2 years.
You've been working out with your team now for 2-3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
After seeing your team, what can you say are your strengths and weaknesses? Now, I know you've got a tough schedule. You've got UMass, who was undefeated last year, who was the only team that defeated UConn at their club level early in the season. Is that going to be a factor?
Well, I haven't in actual fact seen any of the teams. I haven't seen UMass play. I didn't see them play last year. I don't think it's going to be a big factor that we've got them right at the beginning. The players that played them last year are sort of excited about this game. They don't think they should have lost, so they want another shot at it. I'm very optimistic as far as the total schedule is concerned. I think that I have a strong squad. I think I have some strong freshmen and some returning upperclassmen. Mary Beth Curtis, Felice Duffy are our captains. I think we've got a good depth in the squad. So as I say, I'm very optimistic about our schedule. I think that we should do very well. Of course, any coach wants to win. I think it could be very good for us to have a successful season, our first year. So I'm really hopeful. I'm very optimistic about it.
Besides UMass, do you know of any teams that you expect to be the tougher ones on the schedule?
Well, from what I've heard, perhaps Harvard, perhaps New Hampshire, Springfield. I'm not really sure, but say these, from what I've heard of last year, these may be fairly strong teams.
Okay, Coach Dunlop, thank you very much. Good luck with your season. I hope you go out and win them all. Thank you.
Larry Pansiera has been an institution here at the University of Connecticut for 18 years as coach of the Huskies. He has been named New England Coach of the Year 5 times and has directed the Huskies to the College World Series 3 times, and most recently this past year. Unfortunately for his fans, his players, and his school, Coach Pansiera has stepped down as head coach, but not before compiling a record of 294 wins, 160 losses, and 5 ties. Upon his retirement, he recommended Coach Andy Baylock to be his replacement. 1 week later, it was official, and here with the interview of the new coach of the Huskies is Steve Tefft.
I'm speaking with the new head coach of the UConn varsity baseball team, Andy Baylock. Coach, you are taking over for a man who has just coached the last 18 years of UConn varsity baseball. Now, what's it going to be like taking over for a man like Pansiera? What kind of pressures are you going to be under?
Well, Steve, those 18 years I was with Mr. Pansiera for 16 of them. So he and I have been pretty much a team through that whole length of time, and we worked very, very closely, throughout the years, and just like the hand fitting into the glove. And it'll be a little bit strange this year. The two of us aren't together, but again, many, many years there, but the two of us were together. And so as far as consistency of program and things we believe and things that we had done through the years, we really feel strongly about, like the style of play and the consistency that we work to achieve, the tradition that we will continue to carry on here of University of Connecticut baseball. And so it's not like a matter of stepping with a new person, stepping into a new situation and not knowing what's going on and so forth. The transition will be there.
The team will essentially be run in the same manner. There won't be any drastic differences.
Well, a man takes over a situation. A man must be himself. And, Coach Pansiera was Coach Pansiera, just as Bear Bryant is Bear Bryant, and Woody Hayes is Woody Hayes, and so forth, and Coach Baylock will be Coach Baylock.
Okay, you have an interesting policy regarding the use of freshman ball players on the varsity roster here. Why don't you explain that?
Steve, it's not a matter of a policy. It's just a real belief, and in all my years coaching at the university, I found this: that if it could be an avoidance of using a freshman on a varsity level, I'm in favor of it, because as a freshman, a man at that point in a career has not really developed the consistency. A person, first of all, is not established academically, is not established as a player, may have physical talents, but as a coach or the rest of the team does not know what that person will do over the long haul, because we haven't seen him in action over a period of time. We don't know what's going to happen when all of a sudden this situation or that situation comes up.
It's too unpredictable.
Yes, and unpredictable. Good word. And what we're looking for, again, is a consistency. And to get a consistency, it means earning a respect, which takes time to do. And we want to know what a man's work habits are. We don't want any surprises on game day in a varsity contest. We'll take them out here in our workouts, or we'll take them in our junior varsity contest, but we don't want the big surprises and on the big day. And again, a freshman, one day he'll elate you. He'll do something physically super, get you all excited, and then the next day you like to choke them, because they're gonna go up and down, like they vacillate like yo-yos. In fact, we have a standing joke over here, and I know the athletes know my feeling on freshmen. So I call them yo-yos. And I tell them, when you become a sophomore, you become a yo. You become a junior, you get called by your last name. You get called by a senior. You get called by your first name. If you stay on for an extra semester, it's Mister.
But in a case like with a Colin McLaughlin or a Mark Winters, you will make an exception, because last year they were both freshmen, and without them, the team would have gone nowhere.
Well, Mark Winters, the intent was not to have him in the position he ended up in. But you got to remember now, Denny Long came down with a back injury, and the void that was left was a big one to fill. And we had to bring Mark along probably, in fact, undoubtedly, a lot faster than we anticipated bringing him along. And he had to fill the void. Now this year, Denny is back and in full go. He had a great summer down in the Cape Cod League, and he had a 9-1 record down there against outstanding competition. His back is fine. He's ready to go again. So now if that means there's another young freshman coming along, we just hope that we can bring him along at the pace that we feel is in the best interest of the program, the best interest of the person, and so forth. But again, Denny's back this year.
Speaking of Colin McLaughlin, there are rumors to the effect that he is not coming back this year.
Well, Colin is not in school, and at this point in his young career over there, he's taking other routes right now.
Okay. Speaking of last year's team, which players should we look for to fill the void created by the loss of players such as Levine, Gary, and Colin McLaughlin?
Well, Steve, you mentioned a few names there, and it's just like taking the heart and soul out of an operation. Alan Gary, as a sophomore, just had an up-and-down year. He was 100% improved last year, and a real big contributing factor defensively and offensively. And continue on from there, you take Randy Levine, who I don't know how many records he broke and established and tied or whatever. Just had a great year, and he's been a consistent one for us. And then Gary Woodfield at first base, who had been a 3-year starter, very consistent ball player. Colin McLaughlin, who won 12 ball games last year, and it was an honorable mention All-American, yes, school record. And Joe Dipple, who was a senior last year, who made a few significant contributions. So that's a heck of a nucleus to lose.
Well, in light of all that, what can you realistically expect to accomplish in the upcoming year?
Well, first thing, you go back to what the thought is, and the thought is, if they're not here, you close the ranks and march on. And there'll be others coming along and so forth. Depends on how rapidly they come along. It's kind of hard to find, like, if you have a pitcher who throws a ball 100 miles an hour, to replace him with another one like that. So style may have to change, and when you get down to pitching anyway, pitching is just a matter of not letting the other people hit the ball hard. And if you got a guy with a real super live arm, they won't even touch the ball. And if you have a man who can't get it by people in that effect, he's going to have to control it so that weak ground balls are hitting, pop-ups and so forth, and then he gets really into the artistry of it. But as far as anticipation of returning people, there'll be several battles for several positions. It's quite obvious. But there are a couple of fellas back who made a big contribution, and one in particular who, again, as a freshman was forced into a prominent role only because of a necessity with the team, was young Carl Gazzardi. And he finished the season having probably as good a series as the top maybe 3 performers in the New England Championships. And Carl did an outstanding job offensively and defensively in that state championship play, or the New England Championship play. But right after that, before we went down to the regionals, he was involved in an accident where he tripped and put his hand through a glass window and was out. And now he seems to be picking up where he left off, because he's out on the field right now during our initial workouts out here, and he's just like a real ball of fire like he was at that last weekend when he was injured.
And you don't think he and Brian Winters, or rather Mark Winters, excuse me, were hurt by the fact that they were forced into varsity competition last year in their freshman years?
I was kind of tough on Carl initially, and I still can reflect back early in the year on a southern trip and up against an All-American pitcher down at North Carolina and a couple other people like that, where it was kind of tough. You know, you get a young fellow who's had an outstanding high school career, now he's at the next level of ball where, of course, the competition increases tremendously. And just as a pitcher would always say, we have some young pitchers up here, Coach, I used to strike out 13, 15 a game. What's happening to me? I say, well, who'd you ever have trouble with in the lineup? Well, the 3rd and 4th hitters. I said, well, forget the 7, 8, and 9. All the 3rd and 4ths are on all the other teams right now.
Quite a difference.
So, point being, getting back to Carl, he was frustrated at first. You know, offensively, he was having a real tough time. He had to acclimate himself to the new type of pitching he was seeing and the level of the competition. And, again, he was brought along in a hurry. But he's a veteran now, and the same with Mark Winters. And Mark could have continued on and really brought himself along this summer. And I managed a team in the Cape Cod League at Falmouth, and had him on a roster as one of our pitchers, but he had some arm problems, and he had to take 5 weeks of the summer off. And but he did pitch towards the end in another league over here in the state of Connecticut.
Final question. You going to make the players cut their hair?
Oh, that's all part of UConn baseball.
That stays even though Pansiera is gone, right?
Well, that's all part of the uniform, Steve.
Okay, thank you very much, Andy Baylock, the new varsity baseball coach here at UConn.
He has to inspire and improve upon a team that has to face the likings of such tough opponents as Stanford, Penn State, Baylor, Rutgers, Pittsburgh, and Navy. The Cadets lost 6 starters on offense and 8 starters on defense, leaving them with tremendous gaps to fill. They have lost, due to graduation, 3rd-team All-American defensive end Chuck Schott, 2nd-team All-American tight end Clenny Brundridge, and All-East selection center Chuck Johnston and tackle Joe Oliver. 2 more unexpected losses are tackle Bill Dulge and Dave Liebertro, who were expected to start but have opted not to play their senior years. But all is not cloudy on the Army horizon. Earl Mulrain will be back for the Cadets at quarterback, a position last year where he passed for 1,400 yards. Also returning is Jimmy Hill, the team's leading rusher, with 678 yards, and the team's leading scorer with 66 points. On the offensive line, the Cadets only have experience at 2 positions, but these players are big. Left guard Matt Herholtz, who is 6'2" and weighs 235 pounds, and right guard Chuck Boucher, a 6'1", 239-pound senior. The player quarterback, Mulrain, will be setting his sights for 9'5" sprinter Mike Fonstock, a 6'1" junior out of Pennsylvania. The Army defense returns 3 starters. John Hilliard, 5'11", 210-pound inside linebacker, has led the Cadets in tackles the past 2 seasons. Also returning are cornerbacks Jeff Cook and Bruce Elliott, who started last year but are getting a lot of competition from Dave Charist and Danny Webb. 2 question marks for the Cadets are George Mays, a former All-East selection who was out with a knee injury for a half of 1978, and John Hallingstadt, who was injured in last year's Air Force game. The Cadets will be starting 10 lettermen on defense, and it looks like that'll be their strong point in today's game. The Cadet kicking team will need a rebuilding also. They've lost punter Ward White, who sported a 40-yard average, and kicker Corky Mesner due to graduation. But Coach Saban has shown confidence in his new kicker, ex-soccer player Mike Rodemers, and punter Charlie Adams. This year's Cadet schedule is a tough one, and time will tell whether the Army Cadets will have a winning season. The UConn Huskies will have their work cut out for them. As history reports, the Army Cadets are a very tough team on opening day, especially at Michie Stadium.
That That's right, every Friday afternoon from 3 to 6, you can turn up the music with me, Nick James. I'll bring you rock and roll at its best by playing classic tunes and new cuts from the latest LPs on the rock scene. So every Friday afternoon from 3 to 6, listen to the area's best rock with me, Nick James, on 91.7 FM, WHUS, the sound alternative.
And now with the UCONN Preview, here's Joe Florence.
As the season opens today for the UConn Huskies, there will be many questions to be answered. Will the Huskies' experience from last year help sport a potent offensive attack? Will the losses of Robin Anderson, John Konecki, Reggie Pack, Warren Nestorick, Dennis O'Connell, and Jay Pasqualoni, not to mention the question mark surrounding Steve Beal, affect the ever-strong Husky defense? And is the UConn depth going to be a factor as the season progresses? Those are just a few of the questions. The UConn offense will be starting 10 returning lettermen and is comparatively young. Quarterback Ken Schweitzer will be leading the crew, coming off a record-setting season. He set a single-season record for total offense for a freshman, with 891 combined yards in rushing and passing. Another record setter is running back Tony Jordan, who set a single-season record for rushing by a freshman with 744 yards. The rest of the backfield consists of 5'9", 190-pound sophomore Joe Addison, 5'10", 192-pound Raymond James, who doubles as a punter, and 6', 195-pound sophomore Alan Angelone. The backfield combined for 1,329 yards and looks exciting. The receiving end of the Husky offense looks equally as dangerous. Reggie Eckelson returns after a 2-year absence from injuries. At flanker spot, Dave Debish returns from an impressive rookie year, and at the backup spot will be 5'10", 174-pound sophomore Jerome Ingram. Last year, as running back, Ingram ran for 168 yards, but this spring he made an excellent transition to flanker. At tight end will be 6'4", 237-pound Ken Miller, coming off a knee injury during last season. The offensive line will be led by captains Tom Ney and Mark Flood. They will be joined by Jim Rowley, John Corbett, and Brian Jones. The line looks impressive, and hopefully will open up some big holes. The defense is led by captains Ted Walton and Peter Lamagna. Last year, Walton led the team in interception returns, was 6th in tackles, and led the team in kickoff returns. Meanwhile, Lamagna was 2nd in tackles, right behind Dennis O'Connell, and made 2 interceptions. Other lettermen joining the captains are right safety Darrell Wilson, left safety Rusty Umberger, left and right ends Greg Hunter, Alan Burgart, and left and right tackles Jerry Modugno and Dan O'Leary. Steve Beal will not be starting this weekend, but is due for some action. 6 weeks ago, Beal had a knee operation and was supposed to be out for the year. The kicking chores will be handled by Bob Seeger, who set a Division A AA record with a 53-yard shot. He is very consistent from 45 yards and in. But further out than that, Coach Nadzak will go with punter Raymond James, who punted for an average of 36.5 yards last year. BJ Finnell talked to the third-year coach Tuesday, and this is what he had to say.
Coach, there's always a lot of uncertainty at the beginning of a football season, and Lou Saban has said that about his Army team. He's very uncertain, and he's not sure about anything, and he won't be sure until the game is over. What are your major concerns going into today's game?
Well, I think one of our concerns is how we're going to react in that situation, and another one is whether we can shut off Mulrane's throwing. We know he's going to pass to his backs coming out of the backfield. We know they're going to throw a lot of screens and run the draw well. Whether we can react to those things favorably in a hostile environment is something we're concerned about. We're not as much worried about our ability as we are as how we're going to be mentally in that atmosphere.
Okay, now more specifically, you seem to be fairly happy with your kicking game. What is your major point of concern, just the UConn team itself? Not necessarily going into today's game, but what is the major weakness, if there is one, on your team right now?
Well, we don't have big time depth. We really lack depth. We have depth at a couple positions. We think we have 3 or 4 linebackers, and we think our secondary has a couple second team players that can fill in. But after that, we really don't have good depth at skill positions where as much as we'd like to have. And we have 3 or 4 running backs, but those injuries can claim those in a hurry. So depth is our biggest concern, and inexperience at the people in backup positions.
Okay, especially at quarterback with Kenny Schweitzer, number 1, and Al Arizin, who hasn't seen any varsity action.
Yeah, that's a legitimate concern. We have Al Arizin, who's a sophomore, who's never played, and then we have a freshman named Lou Alexi, and we would hate to have to bring Rusty Umberger over, although he's had some experience, and he's settled down in the defense now. So that's a major concern of ours.
Okay, thank you very much. Good luck, Coach.
In conclusion, the Huskies will have their task cut out for them this year. After today's game, they have to travel to Navy and Yale, and later on this season to VMI. Coupled with their always tough Yankee Conference schedule, it will be a long season to answer all the team's question marks and hopefully silence any critics. We'll be back with the conclusion of the WHUS Sports Page right after this.
If you think the capital area news media keeps you well informed of the day's events, try tuning in to Panorama, the WHUS nightly news and public affairs program. Leaving sensationalism in the barrel, the 91.7 news staff, which is complemented by such programs as In the Public Interest, and as well as special nightly features, will give you a complete view of the day's news over a wide range of perspectives. That's Panorama, weeknights at 10 p.m. here on WHUS, your sound alternative.
In other UConn news, the volleyball team has a scrimmage at Rhode Island today, which already started at 12 o'clock. Coach Ruth Mead has stated, quote, "This should be our most powerful year ever," unquote. The men's varsity cross-country team today has a meet with New Hampshire that started at 1 o'clock, and the women's field hockey's game with Indiana University started at 1 o'clock also. In a preseason poll, the Huskies are ranked number 7 nationally. Thank you very much for joining the WHUS Sports Page. I'm Harold Darak. So now stay tuned to your dial, 91.7 FM WHUS, for today's big opening day game between the UConn Huskies and the Army Cadets. This show has been pre-recorded.